in our communities, we often have a lot of people who are fixers and they want to, and it's a really good thing. It's really good that people care so much and that they want to fix and they want to help, but it can lead to a lot of burnout and it can lead to a lot of, depression, anxiety, a lot of these things, because we are pouring our lives into other people. But there's little bits of kind of beliefs going on there in a way that actually perhaps we are the ones who can save or can fix. And learning to just, actually, God, I just need to be faithful to what you have called me to. And that's the bit that I can focus on and leave the rest up to you, or leave the rest up to, other people at times, and I don't have to take on sometimes the criticism or the disappointment or, things that people can say to me at times. Actually, I'm just here to contribute my bit and to be faithful to what God's called me to do.
Hello and welcome to the Proximity Podcast, special episodes coming from the Proximity Conference here in Manchester, which has been a fantastic conference. Make sure you get booked on for next year. I'm not being paid to say that. I've had a brilliant time. My name's Abi Thomas. I live in Bradford and I go to a fantastic church there called St John's Bowling. And it's been a great time to be with you on this podcast. We've got 6 special episodes recorded with people who are doing some teaching or leading workshops at the conference. And today I'm very pleased to be joined by Judy Potts. Judy, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm enjoying being here.
Tell me a little bit about you, Judy. Where do you live and how do you spend your time?
Yeah, so my name is Judy. I'm married to Sam. I've got 2 little girls and I live in Barton in Oxford. So Barton is an estate on the edge of Oxford. Not originally from there, from Northern Ireland. So I moved over about 14 years ago to be part of a church plant. I was leading what was called a Thrive team at the time, which is very similar to Eden. And yeah, I've lived there ever since, really. And I'm a therapist in my kind of day job. But I was saying in my seminar, I kind of come wearing lots of different hats in a way, because I'm a therapist. That's what I do part-time, but I'm also a church leader and very much involved in our community and our estate.
I am also a person who wears many hats.
Yeah, I know.
Quite confusing, can't it? And people see you in different contexts.
I'm like, I sort of feel like this is work rather than, but it's sort of also church.
Yeah. Well, it's good to love what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
And make it reach into all different areas of life. So
yeah,
you are a psychotherapist, is that the right term?
I am.
And you're an, I know I'm going to mispronounce this, Adlerian?
That's it, Adlerian, yeah.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about psychotherapy. What is that? Help us to understand that a little bit and what this particular Adlerian therapy is, what's special about that and why you chose that.
Yeah, so I suppose therapy comes with lots of different titles at times, doesn't it? Counselling, therapy, psychotherapy. It's kind of, psychotherapy is kind of like a broad umbrella term, I suppose, for all of it really. But the particular therapy that I'm trained in does go back into childhood to kind of look at and kind of get clues in a way for why we are the way we are, why we think the way we think, why we behave the way we behave. And I work mainly with adults in my private practice, and it's people who come with all sorts of things that they're struggling in life really. It might be, a diagnosable mental health condition. It might just be they're struggling with stress, or they're struggling in their relationship, or they're struggling with anxiety. It can be a whole host of things. And they've decided, actually, I need a bit more help really than just sort of relying on myself or, reading a self-help book. I need a bit more support in wanting to feel better in life and wanting to understand myself better so that I can live from a kind of healthier space and a healthier place. So Adlerian therapy is then a little bit of a, even within that is kind of a specialty in itself, I suppose. So Alfred Adler was a psychologist who was around about the same time as Freud, but he's not very well heard of, which in a way I kind of like, because he didn't really he cared about his patients and about healing people and helping people rather than the kind of notoriety of being famous and being, a world-renowned psychologist. So he's not as well heard of. But I went to therapy, and when I saw my therapist, she was an Adlerian therapist and also a Christian. And I just absolutely loved the theories of Adler, and it really fitted with my faith and my kind of theology. So Adler kind of really believed that all of us kind of when we're young, when we're a child, try to find belonging in the world in various ways. And the ways that we do that are quite often based on what he would call sort of mistaken beliefs. If everybody is happy, then I feel good inside and I feel okay, right? Which can lead to people pleasing, for example. Or actually, if I feel like I'm good at things, then that's the way that I'll find a sense of belonging. So he believes that this is what he calls kind of lifestyle. It's sort of our lens through which we view the world. And it's a bit different to personality, because personality is a bit more fixed, like maybe what I'm just sort of born with. Whereas he believed that actually we all have a kind of attitude to life, a way of looking at life, a set of beliefs through which we see everything. And that's how we operate in the world. And if we can actually bring that into our awareness, then we can suddenly do something with that and maybe change it or soften it. And he very much believed in this idea of belonging and community, and that mental health is at its best when we are interested in the interests of others, which is very much the bit that really aligns for me with kind of faith. So a lot of it is about helping people feel that sense of belonging, being useful in the world, contributing to the world, finding a sense of meaning in life.
So how has that training and the therapy that you've put into practice, how would you connect that in specifically in your context in Barton, for example?
So I suppose in a bit more of a broader way, I do it so I kind of, do my therapy in my private practice, which is a little bit separate in a way. But then in the community, I just think lots of the themes. So a big theme in Adlerian psychology is that all of us have a sense of inferiority in some way, and that most mental health problems, underneath it all, somewhere is a sense of not feeling good enough or feeling inadequate or feeling inferior. And the stronger that sense of inferiority is, often the bigger the kind of problems or mental health challenges that you'll see. And we see that with so many people that we work with in our community, that sense of, and also then when our sense of belonging is kind of weak in a way, and we don't feel that sense of, or we don't have that basis of unconditional love, and a sense of belonging and safety and security, again, that plays out into what we struggle with and our mental health. So a lot of it is, through our church, helping people feel part of community, feel that sense of belonging, introducing them to the unconditional love of God, which is the foundation really for a lot of being able to feel that sense of being healthy and whole in who we are. So I weave it into my, how I preach and the things that we do. We also set up a listening service in our community, which is very much trying to kind of meet some of the mental health needs. So we've trained lots of volunteer listeners. So yeah, I try to champion the mental health side and a bit of the Adlerian theory in what I do.
Excellent. And something you mentioned about that theory, about just chimed in with that. I mean, it's much quoted proverb, isn't it, about how we knock the rough edges off each other. Iron sharpens iron, a friend sharpens each other. I really chime in what you're saying about community and building that sense. Is there something in it about challenging each other in healthy ways? Like, how would you perhaps approach discipleship that might be a bit interesting? Connection?
I guess, that helping each other be accountable to one another, I suppose, and that in supporting each other when it comes to our emotional health and our emotional life. And actually, what I was saying in the seminar was very much this idea that understanding that we're all equal, right? There's not these different camps in a way of people who have it all together versus those who are messy and broken, or people who, know a lot more versus people who don't, or the people who are serving versus the people who are being served to. Actually, Jesus just didn't see things like that. He sees all of us as equal, and all of us. And that's a really helpful thing for people to understand in their own discipleship. It's not that there's these people over here in church who are Christians, who've been Christians a long time, that they're somehow better in a way, right? Or more stable or whatever. We're all broken and messy and human. We all struggle with things, but God sees us equally. We're equally in need of healing and saving and grace. So, it helps us to just feel that sense of, I'm not inadequate because maybe I, don't have the same education, or I haven't had the same background. And also I'm not, for some of us, I'm not better than other people, right? Because maybe, I don't struggle in the same way that they do, or, I know a bit more. None of us are better or worse, which I think is a really helpful thing to bring into discipleship.
And one of the people that came with me today, he was in your seminar, and he said he can struggle with his self-worth. But one thing that really helped him was when he volunteers at New Wine Festival in the summer, there's an archdeacon, and he used to go and serve them breakfast every morning. And he said that simple act was a thing that really gave him that self-belief. He said, if he's willing to get up early to serve me breakfast every day, that must mean that I am worth something. Such a simple act. I really like that. Let's think about it in terms of if it's not too personal.
No, it's fine.
How do you handle the emotional weight of obviously the areas where we live? Often people have quite surface trauma, things that we can see that are more obvious than perhaps in other areas. How do you stay emotionally stable and also faithful to God through that? What are some of the practices you have, I guess?
So, well, a lot of this is kind of, again, what we talked about in the seminar in a way, because I think sometimes all of us can have some of those beliefs, in the background, and for me, a lot of the time it has been, and it was very much, wanting to do things well, wanting things to be successful, wanting things to be really good. And, when we have that kind of belief that, I can only sort of feel good or safe inside when those things kind of happen. And if they don't happen, then it sort of throws us into this emotional turmoil of it feels like failure, or I'm not good enough, or things aren't going well. Well, actually, when we can work on some of those things, that's what helped me massively in terms of being able to let go, let go of the pressure, the expectation, readjust what I think of in terms of success. And one of the other things we also talked about was about, boundaries and how we put in emotional boundaries and understanding what is my stuff and what is somebody else's stuff, and where I need to actually just say, what, it's not mine to take on. It's not mine to hold. It's not my responsibility to fix. And I think people can struggle with that. And in our communities, we often have a lot of people who are fixers and they want to, and it's a really good thing. It's really good that people care so much and that they want to fix and they want to help. But it can lead to a lot of burnout, and it can lead to a lot of, depression, anxiety, a lot of these things, because we are pouring our lives into other people. But there's little bits of kind of beliefs going on there in a way that actually perhaps we are the ones who can save or can fix. And learning to just, actually, God, I just need to be faithful to what you have called me to. And that's the bit that I can focus on and leave the rest up to you, or leave the rest up to, other people at times, and I don't have to take on sometimes the criticism or the disappointment or, things that people can say to me at times. Actually, I'm just here to contribute my bit and to be faithful to what God's called me to do.
And how would you teach some of those things perhaps to emerging leaders or young people, or people perhaps in an earlier stage of discipleship, whatever age they are? What are some of the healthy practices you might teach people?
So that one in particular comes from Adler, and he called it the separation of tasks. And it's a really, really useful one to kind of help people understand what is my responsibility and what's mine to carry and what is somebody else's. And actually, a lot of the time we get them confused, and we sort of think, oh, if somebody is angry or upset, it's my fault, right? I've done something. And we sort of take that on, then that I need to fix that in some way, or I need to put that right. Whereas actually it's learning that, those emotions belong to the other person. They don't belong to me. I can care and I can, want to try and, repair or put that right. But ultimately, I don't need to take that on, right? So little kind of practices and little tools and little insights from therapy can be really useful in some of those ways.
God, give us another tool. I love practical tools.
Well, one that we didn't talk about today actually is called the window of tolerance. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes, I have heard about
that. Yeah, from a psychology point of view, which again, for me, I find super, super helpful, and I'll often teach in terms of. Go ahead.
So, well, that's sort of the idea that you would build, everyone has a tolerance level.
Yes, exactly. We all have this window that is like our sweet spot in a way of where we feel regulated in terms of our nervous system, where we operate best from, where we can respond rather than react to things. When you start to notice yourself edging out of that is what's really useful to notice. So sometimes we go into what's called the hypoarousal, which is more the anxiety, racing thoughts, wanting to do things, or the hypoarousal, which is more the feeling like withdrawing from things or going into ourselves, or feeling a little bit more the kind of low mood bit. But understanding those things and understanding what is it that pushes me out of that window of tolerance? What is it that makes me feel that little bit dysregulated, where I'm more likely to get angry at something, or to feel stress, or to feel overwhelmed, or I'm more likely to withdraw into myself and to shut down emotionally, or to suppress things. Learning those things can be so, so helpful. And that's why I just think, therapy and all these tools are so useful, because if we can know ourselves and understand ourselves so much better, we can just respond to things much more rather than, life happening to us,
Therapy is quite expensive. How would you I'm assuming you would encourage people to have healthy therapy. What would you say to people perhaps doing that on a low budget, or don't have much spare cash? What what advice could you give?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big one. Obviously, the context that we work in, long waiting lists for the NHS. It's people don't have the kind of money to be able to access therapy. What I would say is if you can afford it, lots of private therapists will have low cost spaces, that you can it's always worth getting in touch with people anyway. But also I think as churches, there's a lot that we can then offer into that space. So, we've set up our listening service, which means that we can offer 12 sessions of listening to somebody. And the listeners are trained in a lot of these just active listening skills. They understand a little bit about different things to do with anxiety or stress or different things. So that's what we've done and we do run little groups around different things, different well-being groups. So I think the church has a lot to feed into that space. I mean, the other thing I would say, obviously I do have an Instagram account, but Instagram is a really helpful way actually for people to access short bits of content when it comes to therapy. My next door neighbour in particular, she could not afford therapy, and I don't know that actually she would ever go to therapy for lots of different reasons and barriers that she faces. But she'll often say, oh, Judy, I saw something that you created and it just really spoke to me. And in that tiny little bit of content, she maybe picked up one or two tools that she could use or different ways of thinking about things. So there's some free resources out there that are useful as well.
And you're at the social therapist.
The social therapist, yeah.
Social therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just need to search that, don't you? Just do the dots.
Well, the dots. Well, yeah. If you search that, it should come up. Hopefully.
Excellent. Well, that's really practical advice. I love that. So, finally, then, I'd love to hear just a bit more about your community. Tell me a bit about where you live and the things that you've seen God doing over the last 12 months or so.
Yeah, 12. I thought you were going to say 12 years, 12 months.
You can say 12 months, 12 years if you like.
I was going to say
start at the beginning.
So, when I moved over, we sort of partnered with a Baptist church to plant our church. And there wasn't really any other relevant, accessible expression of church in our, there is now actually, but there wasn't then in our community. And so, over the years, it's just been thinking about how do we make the gospel accessible and relevant in a way that, the Baptist church that planted us is actually not that far away from our state, but, there's just so many barriers for people even just walking the other side of the ring road, to go to this more middle-class church. And a big part of what we have done has always been about incarnational ministry. So whenever I started, me and a bunch of other youth workers moved into the estate and lived there. And lots of us who are part of the church still live in the estate and really intentionally, bought houses or lived in places in the community because we just really wanted that sense of, living alongside people and being in the neighbourhood and, going to the same schools and shops and that being a way that God can really use us by being neighbours. And obviously the word proximity really fits with all of that, doesn't it? It's such a good
what does proximity
word
mean? Tell us about it.
Well, I think it's there's just something so important about being able to live and breathe the same life in a way as the people that you're ministering to. And it, not always, it doesn't, mean that we can't at times do things, but there's something about, saying that actually, and I know people in our estate who I've worked with and friends of mine, that's the thing that they've been like, wow, you were willing to actually live in a place where lots of people don't want to live, that people try to move out of. But the fact that you've, intentionally and purposefully moved here and want to stay here, not just graduate to a bigger house or to live in a nicer area or whatever, but stay here has meant a huge amount to them. And I think for me, I just love the idea of being the tangible presence of God in people's lives and in our community, that actually we are the representatives and we carry Jesus in us, into all those spaces and places.
So how do you maintain your proximity to Jesus, and do you have practices that you found helpful?
I love worship. And so for me, worship is something that, and I think also in our church, it's also people love, they learn certain songs, and it's an easy way for people to sing truth, and sing bits of scripture in the Bible. So I love worship, and I love just going for walks and listening to things and meeting with God in that way. I also love reading and books. So I do read read lots of things. But yeah, and just having people in my life, I suppose, I feel able to just to pray with and be open with, and to feel like they can challenge me. And yeah, it's that bit you were talking about, isn't it, of the iron sharpening iron in a way.
Yeah.
It's having people who get it and who understand the context, for me, has been really helpful over the years. You know, other people in other churches who are doing similar things.
Which is why the Proximity Conference is great.
Exactly.
Judy Potts, thank you so much for joining us
You're
on
welcome.
the Proximity Podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks.